right?
Yeah, that was in Georgia.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Hey guys, kind of unexpected. I don't know if you guys know this guy or not. Danny Fitzmaurice from Zippers, and you know he has relatives in the area. We go back how long?
Oh,
25
years.
25 years, give or take. He happened to be passing through, and I love this guy. We've known each other a long time. And, you know, the only problem is me and Danny don't talk a whole lot because every time we talk, it turns into multiple hours.
And we're busy.
And we're busy.
Very busy.
It turns into multiple hours. We talk about everything from trying to solve world hunger, of course, to motorcycle stuff. And he and I started in on a conversation about everything from state of the industry, why we do what we do, all the things. And I had to look at him and go, "Hey, Danny, stop. Let's put this on camera." Because it's stuff that he and I wanted to talk about that I think all of you would like to know, a perspective. And Danny's wise beyond my years, and obviously he's been in the industry a very long time, and I want him to talk because we can always learn something from Danny. But I wanted to give you guys a perspective in this pop-up, completely unexpected thing, and quite frankly, a visit I was very honored to get because Danny is a wonderful, wonderful, trusted friend of mine. And so, guys, I think we're just going to continue the conversation we had and let you guys listen along because I can't think of anything more pure and honest and raw. And before we do that, I want to and watch his head closely because I know he's going to disagree. You know, he gets calls, I get calls too from people. You know, they think that all of us that I don't want to say are at the top of the industry, but we've been around for a long time. They seem to think to a large degree we're savage competitors with each other and we're at each other's throats and things. And the reality of it is we learn from each other.
Learn a lot from each other.
And our overall goal, we have to work together to make the industry better, to provide better products for our customers. And the fact of the matter is the industry is big enough for all of us.
And the pursuit of knowledge is endless.
The pursuit of knowledge is endless. Danny had said a minute ago, only the fool thinks he knows everything. And we all can learn from each other, our experiences, our talents, and things like that. And I'm thankful to have relationships with this guy because we learn those things. So some of the topics that I think he and I are probably going to talk about on camera here have everything to do from the world we live in post the big C world, the big C word, different things from raw materials, quality of components, the extra steps it takes to do the things we do, the differences, quite frankly, between what I do as a builder and what he does as a supplier and a manufacturer and things like that. So I thought you guys may enjoy being in on part of a very real and honest conversation with certainly an expert and somebody admiring the industry. So thanks for being willing to be on camera.
Oh, pleasure to be here. Absolutely.
So what do you think of things, man? I guess I don't want this to be an interview. It needs to be a conversation because that's what we do, right?
Well, I'll tell you, first thing comes to my mind, what you were just saying right now. I was, during the COVID year, that was the C word, right?
The big C word.
Yeah. So that was a crazy time. And to me, it seemed like talking to people who ran other businesses, if you made a product or you provided a service for something people could do outside of watching TV and listening to Dr. Fauci, man, I mean, it was big, So biking, hiking, race cars, racing motorcycles, motorcycling, bicycling,
RVs,
you name it, RVs,
everything,
man, it was crazy. So what you just said just brought back a thought that I had. I remember our heat treater was in peril, because there was places that were closed down, and we would send parts out, say like cams to heat treat, and they'd take a week, 10 days, and at some point they were like 8 weeks. It was like unbelievable. And then I would drive up there because we didn't have time for shipping.
Right.
We had to
go get it.
Right, exactly. And we go up there, and it made you think about all the people that are behind all the things that we take for granted every day.
Yes.
Here's this great big facility and all these hardworking people that work in this heat treater, and they're working behind the scenes that nobody even knows about, and to make a product correctly, so that if we're manufacturing and grinding it, or you're putting it into a very engine build, whether it's something simple or complex, if they didn't do their job right, it didn't turn out right.
There's this snowball.
Exactly.
And you've heard me say before, there are only so many people that make things. And not just me, but you. We have to rely on people that make things. And sometimes those things, be it raw material suppliers or forgings or cylinder sleeves or whatever the case may be, the further you go up the chain, there's smaller numbers of people that actually truly make things.
Right.
And most of those companies overlap into multiple industries.
Correct. And then think about this, that when you get your parts back from heat treating, what is your inspection process? How are your people inspecting parts to make sure that they're hardened properly, to make sure the finishes are correct, to make sure the accuracy of the lobe centers and everything has to be just right. And, there's so much that's just taken for granted. And I think one thing that's a kind of symbiotic between how you run your business and how we do things from making parts is that we are trying to focus on making the best quality we can.
Yes.
And that's what makes your company so unique, because there's nobody trying to hustle it out the door. It doesn't go out the door until you have everything just the way you want it. And it's so important because, guys like yourself, the guys who provide best quality, they don't beat their chest and hawk about that. They just do it. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with people that make things and they don't have those kind of processes and inspection processes before that motorcycle is delivered. But, the reality is you're in a league with a very small group of companies that do things correctly. And that's what's so important about having, somebody like you, whether we're just a small provider of a service or a product or something, that the quality is everything. When you're talking about this hand-built, customization, that the way that you do your stuff in your garage here, it's just amazing.
Well, it's and the reason I've I'm going to kind of talk to the camera for a second too. The reason I've worked with Danny for many, many, many years for various different reasons. We all can't do everything. You guys know I don't have a CNC machine, but how many years ago did you start CNC porting stuff for me? I mean, 15 plus years ago, right?
Yeah. Correct. We originally did it 25 years ago, but we were doing that through a contact through NASCAR Winston Cup back then it was called.
Right.
And so we would develop our models, and then we'd have that stuff cut, and then eventually, as we started expanding, we just needed to bring that process inside. And we have a really super talented cylinder head guy that it's just phenomenal, and he's very creative. And we like to create applications just to fit. So if you have a CVO engine, or you're a drag racing engine, or you want to do something for a road bike or whatever, that you can focus on the efficiency of the engine with the cylinder fill. And the other unique part about zippers is kind of unique is that because we design camshafts, we can kind of tweak the cam in line with what that cylinder head's doing, and it creates some very interesting results, I guess.
Exactly, and it's it comes down to a lot of differences with a lot of things, and like I'm totally transparent, guys. Not everyone can make everything or do everything. You guys have seen years worth of my videos. I don't have a CNC machine, and I'm not going to pretend. I'm not CNCing my own heads. Sometimes I've gotten phone calls from people that says, "Who grinds your cam?" And I make a joke that I grind them with my own teeth. But the thing is, there are only so many people that make things. So I get to make a choice. Can I improve my level of production, focus on the things that I do exceptionally well, and when some talented guy like this that has a crew and has made the investment in the equipment and the training with a CNC machine to be able to port heads, what we do instead is I have a conversation with this guy, and I tell him, hey, look, these are the valve sizes I want for this specific guy. This is the cam I'm going to run for this guy. We're all trying to hit that maximum brake torque, put the power where he rides. We're trying to narrow down those things, and that's things like a small, I guess you would say, boutique builder like myself. We have the luxury of doing that things. We can pull from several different places. But what I love about this guy is even though he may be doing the CNC porting instead of me, every single time when I've said this port, this valve size, this is exactly what I want, he delivers. So in essence, you doing that part of it for me is no different than if you were here working here and me telling you how to do it. It's no different. But he has the expertise, the setup, and the facility to do that, allowing me to focus on the other aspects of the precision. And feel free to jump in and disagree with me any time. I mean, we all have a place in the industry. And I kind of liken it to buying a suit. A fella can go to JCPenney and get a suit off the shelf. He could go to a Joseph A. Bank or a Brooks Brothers and have his sleeves tailored and all that. But then you have that little Italian tailor in a dark alley in downtown New York that can't promise you he can have it done in a week. But he's going to give you your fabric choices. He's going to ask you to come back multiple times for that custom fitting. And he's going to, pull the sleeve in, the breast in. He's going to do all those things. Each has its place. And I think we're the latter.
Think about what you just said. It's interesting. So you want this percentage of intake flow, or percentage of the exhaust flow of the intake, and you want these lobe centers or this much duration, and you want the combustion chamber shape to be this, and the chamber volume to be this. And then you're going to max that with an exhaust pipe that you like the harmonic of that design, and then your tuning strategy and all this stuff. It's so complicated, but you make it all come together so it looks easy. By the time you're delivering it to the customer, he's like, wow. And that's like, but it's very difficult in the background doing it. Yeah. But, and again, that goes back to the original thing about how we learn, see, because you're discovering things that we never even thought about, right? And so that's your recipe. And we're big enough in the engineering side, in the manufacturing side, but we're a small enough company that if you know how you want that thing, we're delighted to make it that way because it's your combination.
Right. And I'll admit sometimes I do things outside the box that I've had to, you remember over the years, I've said, I want this. And even your guys have said, are you sure you want that? Me and you talk on the phone and he goes, give him what he wants. Because,
that's right.
I admit will throw some weird combinations. I'll ask him to run a certain port on some stuff sometimes, and I'll run a real weird cam. But there are factors that come into play with that custom tailored suit aspect. And it's not that necessarily anyone else is doing something wrong. Sometimes it's just different.
Right.
And so, but for a person that, again, everyone is different. Budgets are different. Desired outcomes are different. Patience is different. There's a lot of factors that come into this stuff, right? And so I think, to a large degree, having someone like them that I can rely on to do the things that I don't do, or can't do, like CNC porting, because I don't have a machine, and even camshafts. So, let's go way back. Let's talk about the 576 for the twin cams. All right, when you first developed that, if you remember, in our very early conversations, I'm a big fan on those bigger valve engines of using a dual coil spring. Okay, and not that a beehive is wrong. A lot of this just comes through research and experience, that kind of that Dunning-Kruger that we've talked about before. I like having a dual coil spring simply because of the harmonics, what it does above 3,500 RPM, and also a little bit of a safety factor just in case that spring might break, that outer spring might break. So with that particular cam, it's strange because I'll use it in engines with compression ratios that the average guy wouldn't. But then when we look at port diameters, we look at throat diameters, we look at Mach index of this with a throttle body size or carburetor size, we look at all those factors, it all works. But in the end, that camshaft, to a large degree, was specifically designed for dual coil springs to maintain the valvetrain harmonics. And I have used that cam in everything from a 10-to-1 95 all the way up to a 10.5-to-1 Pro Charger 124 making 12 pounds of boost.
Right.
But there are so many factors, and you guys have seen in my videos, and he and I talk about all the time. Everybody focuses on horsepower numbers, but it's
it's torque moves you, man.
Oh, buddy.
Yep.
And we talk about everything because it's that total design element. And what I love so much about working with Danny is that he's got the experience and the history, and a lot of times we just have to trust each other, right? It's that, hey, Kev, that doesn't sound right, but let's do it, right?
And there's an interesting backstory to that cam and that design. I'll give you the 30-second. Remember, we've all had great teachers.
Yes.
That's how we're here. And our teacher goes back to Dick Hilferty, and Dick Hilferty originally purchased Sifton cams from Tom Sifton, 1970. And
isn't that where your manual cam grinder came from?
Well,
kind of.
No.
Sorry to digress,
if you go back to
anyway.
them, I mean, if you look up Sifton and you go online, you'll see that back then Tom was a brilliant guy. He converted piston grinders into rocker tables so he could grind a profile and to calculate the stylus size and the master and all that. I mean, it's just mathematically, just when you consider back in the day, him doing that back, oh my gosh, many years ago. So Dick was a great guy, very smart, loved engine development, and we stumbled into him only because he sold that business in the late 70s. And when his non-compete was done, he started back grinding cams again, and we met him through Dan Baisley. And Dick was brilliant. And so accelerating this story, the cam designer at Zippers, Adam Herbert, learned from Dick. And Adam's very talented, and him and I exchanged a lot of data back and forth about tech support. This guy's got a noisy engine. Here's the specifications of it. And before Dick had retired, he had one of his old cam models that he had was the 575, and it was something he built for his Buell Blast that he did a lot of testing with. And so we used it, put it in a big twin, worked pretty good, but we would get phone calls about noise with dual springs. Mm-hmm. So the profile was designed around a conical wire, which didn't have the harmonic of a dual spring.
Exactly.
And so Adam sat down and analyzed this data really carefully, and he came up with a design on the 575 that had the ramp and calculating the growth of how much the head grows and the spring and all that action, and would in turn generated that profile, which is very similar. It's almost like they're brothers, the 575 and the 576, but what I agree with you, it's so quiet. It's wonderful. It's just wonderful.
And see, guys, understand this. These are the kind of conversations that me and him have, right? We talk about these things. There are names and people behind the scenes that do things that you've never heard of before. And it's, I want to say, the brainiacs of this whole thing. Yeah. And it's things like, just on the valve spring thing, for example. Valve springs don't do this when they're operating. All right, they do this, and they start to do this in the middle.
It's
right.
It's not pretty.
It's not pretty.
It's like a hula dance.
They're all over the place. Yeah. And then we talk about harmonics. What harmonics are high frequency vibrations that eventually will destroy things. And so what we have to do is mitigate harmonics. We have to think of the balance and we have to think of the coil bind, the oscillation. We have to think of all those things, the weight of the valve, the seat pressures, the open pressures, everything. I mean, when people talk camshafts, they talk about how much lift you got. Well, not only do you get past lift, duration, overlap, center line, intake close, intake open, you get up past all those things, we still have to think of the grind itself. Is it symmetrical, asymmetrical, single pattern, dual pattern, what valve sizes, Mach indexes, port velocity, cylinder fill percentages? We have to think of all those things. And I guess this engine thing is far more complicated than people would imagine. And I think the whole idea with my channel, and as Danny is, we're very transparent. The reality is a lot of the things that cost what they cost is because of conversations like this. It's testing. And I think, what was it you said earlier, that successes come from failures? Or what was it you said?
It was good judgment. I got to remember that now. It said
we're getting old.
No, the hard drive's filling up. So it's good judgment.
Comes from experience. Experience comes from failures.
From bad judgment.
From bad judgment. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
So it's, you have sometimes just as many failures as you do successes, but it takes time to have
It does. And then, nobody needs to get too deep in the weeds about all this stuff because that's why we test, right?
That's why we do what we do.
That's why you
That's
feed
right.
back and we feed back and we do these things to test. But the harmonics of everything that goes in the design is done so that you're not sitting on the side of the road with a broken valve spring, you know, or worrying about stuff like this, because we are trying to control the valve train because we got a lot of movement from the cam to the tappet to the push rod. What's the stiffness of that push rod, the rocker arm, and how it moves. And then we got the hula hoops going on with the valve springs, and then the RPM that the engine's going to run at. But it's exciting stuff. I mean, it's kind of weird, but we enjoy doing this.
We love doing this stuff.
It's fun, and of course we love finding new things that make power, you know?
Making things better. And you know, it's kind of interesting the way a lot of this stuff works. So if I'm building something or doing something, or he's found out something, we're picking up the phone. And sometimes those things are critical. Sometimes they're not so critical. It's things to look for. But you know, like valve seats moving in M8 heads. All right, it's one of those things that you have to look for it, but it can go from just cleaning up a valve seat to having to then pull a valve seat, oversize it, put a new one in, everything else. So sometimes some problems can come up, or findings that we find, everything from the bevels cut on the cylinders that got into the liners that meant those cylinders were garbage. That's another thing. Anyway, sometimes it's a critical deal, and sometimes it's a stop the press.
Yeah.
We've got to figure this out. And sometimes those singular stop the presses can mean several things. Either you stop everything, you have a fairly quick solution, or you go back to the drawing board. But in the bottom line, you get to a point you can only compromise so far.
Right, and we got to also know, is the problem we're looking at the symptom, or is it the cause?
Exactly.
And you have to do a little scratching in the dirt sometimes to find that out. It brings me back to all these conversations about oiling systems and oils. You know, when you think about that, is that because, boy, we got to lubricate a lot of parts.
Yep.
And there are a lot of high pressure parts. And the Harley is, I always say, it's one of the few what I would call a 4-stroke engine with a 2-stroke bottom end. Mm-hmm. So it creates a lot of problems related to oil flow and how it gets to all the proper areas. It's not an automobile with a 5-quart oil pan that we're just pulling from that sump. And the other thing that we get a fair amount of calls about, we talk to guys in shops, is if you've experienced a failure of something in the engine, whether it's a factory engine and now you're going to turn it into something bigger, or whatever, upgrading to a different level. If you got scarred up parts on the pistons and the tappet bores, or valvetrain, where you can see the micro welding on the top of the stem, from the rocker arm. If you got enough contamination in there, a lot of guys will take and they put a new engine in, and they still got the same gritty stuff in the oil pan, and it's in the oil cooler. And I don't remember the name of the guys that did a video, but it was really good. They actually contacted one of the oil cooler manufacturers and asked if you should replace oil coolers or should you clean them, because a lot of guys say, yeah, I just put it in the safety clean, let it run for a day, and I'm good, right? Yeah. Man, that stuff is down in those little grids, and it's like a slurry paste, but it'll come like the creepers from. It'll come out when the oil's at 250 degrees and the engine's vibrating, and like little by little you've just recontaminated. It's
like blast bead in the inside of the engine case.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. And it's I love being able to have conversations like this. And guys, actually, I think collectively, Danny and I have probably, between you being on the phone on your way here to us on the phone this morning before you got here, collectively we talked for hours and hours.
Which we don't get enough time to do. But,
we don't get enough time to do.
That's part of being busy.
So what would you say, and interesting you mentioned that, when you mentioned about the oiling system and the modern engines and stuff, we can't get away with the things on the engines now that you could have gotten away with 20 years ago. I mean, you had, let's just say Evos, shovels, even early twin cams and stuff. You had mechanical bearings everywhere. They don't need as much pressure. They could basically survive on oil volume itself.
No piston oilers.
No oilers, no anything. Now we get to where we are now. The engines have drastically increased in size. And that's kind of a comedy of the thing, too. People talk about how awesome and wonderful the Evo was. Well, the Evo made 50 horsepower out of 80 cubic inches. Mm-hmm. Now we're getting 150 horsepower out of 124 cubic
So we
inches.
got pressure now.
We got pressures now. We have thinner rings. We have tighter ring packs. We have larger bore to stroke ratios. We have higher compression ratios. We're getting far more than 1 horsepower per cubic inch now. We also have less mechanical bearings. We're relying on pressure from an oiling system to create laminar layers for bearing surfaces in Babbitt bearings and bushings and all these things. Clearances and precision is hypercritical, more so now than what it's ever been before.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. And in addition, I get a fair amount of questions of people asking, well, you know, I didn't have problems with scuffing pistons when I had no oilers on one of these engines, right? And if you look at the diesel engines now have oilers in them, you know, the motorcycle engines, some automotive engines, because the pressures just keep going up.
Pressures keep, and their skirts were this long, not that long.
Right.
You had better stability. You had
Well, so the quality of the oil that you need is paramount, and especially when. And another thing I keep thinking about was, remember when the twin cam first came out, 1999. They used, I believe, it was an old Johnson Tappet, and it had massive amounts of oil flow that came through the lifter. And what that oil was doing is it was the temperature of the cylinder head so hot, air-cooled engine, that it's overheating the oil. It was cooking the oil, so they cut the oil way back in 2002, 03. So then what we noticed is that when the new lifters were in place, guys who had their assembly processes, sometimes they would stick valves when they were first putting the engine together. Maybe they went on the dyno a little too fast, you know, and then because the rocker lids were on, and they said, hey, you know, I mean, and next thing you know, you got a valve scrubbing. And the lifters keep getting more and more resistance, you know, because they need a tight bleed rate on them with the higher lift cams and the heavier valve springs. So what we call is like the start of a new engine is like the internal combustion engine version of maybe natural childbirth. Very critical time, right?
Exactly.
Because we don't know that oil's flowing through the whole engine. We know that maybe the light went off, but we could take the lids off the top and find that there ain't a drop of oil up there, and we got 10 minutes of runtime.
Correct.
So we are always trying to look at things and say, well, just because we didn't have to do that 20 years ago, that's not necessarily the case today, because the engine builder is responsible to make sure that that thing is lubricating everywhere before any load starts applying to it, because it's not going to end well if it doesn't.
Exactly. And then what we have to do as precision builders, it's great, again, to be able to work with him, because when I run into something during different build processes and stuff, I can pick up the phone and call him and go, hey, man, we got something we may want to look at. And a lot of times the products that you have are a result of people finding odd things, like you showed me today. Your new cam for the M8s, your chain drive system with the new dual piston tensioner and all that kind of stuff. You know, and is gear drive great? Sure. But if a guy's not replacing a crank and his run out isn't quite where it should be, you still have an opportunity to improve those things with a product like that. Make a substantial improvement, more accurate valve timing, less chatter, proper position of a tensioner and all those type of things, less bleed, less all of those things that you would have with that. So a lot of times products aren't just about fluff. Sometimes there is real science, research, and problem solving behind them. And I think I do that well, kind of cut through the bull crap, because there is a lot of bull crap out there too. Smoke and mirrors. Yeah. And so we cut through that. But, you know, there's, I guess a whole reason behind this video is to help you guys understand that, you know, I don't live in a bubble, neither does he. And I can tell you, if he runs into something and he gives me a call and says, hey, man, you need to keep an eye out for this, I look. And
you may discover something that 4 or 5 of us might be scratching at, but, you know, you have the specimen and you have the knowledge and you have the insight to what you're looking for, which again is seamless for your customers. You know, your engine
they don't
customer,
see all this stuff in the background.
No, it's all part of the package. You know, it reminds me of Smokey Unick talking about, you know, when you buy an engine to go dirt car racing or something like that. You know, I remember reading his column in Circle Track magazine years ago, and he was telling a guy that wanted to build his own racing engine. He says, go to the best guy in town and just write the check and just buy it. All of his experiences, all of his trials and tribulations, all the things that he had to do wrong to get to do it right, you didn't pay for any of that. No. You just paid for the labor. Right? It was, everything was free. You know, it's like, I mean, it really kind of probably disappointed that reader because he thought he was going to be racing and he was going to save a whole bunch of money, but he really did save him a lot of money by telling him,
That's right.
Write the check.
Write the check and get it done.
That's right.
And most of what we do, bolting the parts together is the easy part.
Boy, howdy.
That's the easy part. Bolting it together when everything's said and done, rocking and rolling. But it's the nuances because, guys, you got to understand, as time has went on in the post-sea world, all these things are changing, right? People are typically producing things faster, this, that, and the other, whatever. I would venture to say that 90% of the time that I spend and what he spends are correcting. Number one would be correcting deficiencies that we're not replacing. We're compensating for deficiencies, right?
Or the demand has exceeded whatever it could
the
provide.
base format.
Right.
Exactly right. So when a base part is designed for 80 horsepower and you want to squeeze 150 out of it, well, not only do we have to compensate for the original deficiency that was there, we have to engineer it so that it will be able to provide the longevity and all of that.
It's paramount.
Too.
Otherwise, it's
That's
just
all
a
of it.
short-burning fuse.
Yeah, exactly. And then when you get into the world of true custom engine building, that little Italian tailor in downtown New York, that extra little bit more when you are bringing in these combinations of things from various places, those things stack up. They add up. And often, sometimes you got to take 2 steps back. And if anything, would overcompensate be the right word?
Yeah, probably so. And you're right. Taking 2 steps back gives you a chance to look at things and analyze your data and go back to it and go back to that lubrication issue. If you had the 150 horsepower or more engine, or maybe it just makes 160 50 foot-pounds of torque, and you're going to love it in that little chunk of area. You probably need a better lubricant in the engine than say something standard or something you could get a good price on or something, because you've exceeded with all those pressures. It's just there. And of course, I'm not going to give you advice. We have some oil brands that we really like a lot, but
I haven't sent you my new Klotz oil we're working with, have I?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, you're going to get some.
So, but in the end, it's just that you got to think about the whole package, and I think that's what we're talking about here is the total package. And there's so much that, like I said, like when somebody buys an engine from you, they have no idea all the goodies that come with it, free of charge. You're just charging for the labor of your knowledge and the things that you do.
Yeah, because you've been here, you've been around, you see what we do.
It's impressive. Yeah, it is impressive. Yeah.
Well, that means a lot coming from you. So, anything you want to add? Anything you want to tell folks? I think I just wanted everybody to see that you do have relationships between professionals in this industry. The goal is to provide the best part we can in our own genre or our own area of the market. Yours is different than mine. You're obviously a much bigger production facility than I am. I love the work you do. I always have forever. You guys know I always have. We have our own area, our own niche, our own thing. What's your take on that?
Well, I love this market. I've been in the motorcycle market my entire life. I was fortunate enough to grow up in it. My neighbor was a Harley dealer back in the 70s. And the other thing that it's the learning never stops. It is fantastic every time something new, like the new Harley platforms that are coming out. It's just really incredible to be a part of that. And then to work with guys like yourself and other guys that, that are part of your colleagues that are in the business. It's fantastic, and we just enjoy every day of doing it. It's not for the faint of heart.
No.
There's a lot of hours in the shop working, but it's all good stuff.
Yeah, it's all good stuff. Guys, if you've got any questions, Danny will probably end up watching the video at some point or whatever. I try to get to questions as often as I can, but as hard as it was for him to be here for a couple hours, as it was for me to sit down with him for a couple hours, I'll try my best to answer any questions you guys may have in the comments. I guess other than that, state of the industry, we continue to continue. We correct the things we see. We constantly try to improve and do better, meet the demands of a market without compromising on quality and outcome. As long as the expectation is realistic, we have to.
That's true. That's true. I mean, we can't turn everything into a grand piano. Right?
No, we can. And if you want to squeeze 11,000 horsepower out of an all aluminum block, you ain't going to take it back and forth to the grocery store every Sunday.
Or have a cast crankshaft in it, or other like OE parts. Right? It's just not going to happen.
Exactly. Yeah. It's realistic expectations for realistic outcomes, I guess you would say. Yeah. Anything you want to add?
No, I just want to thank you for allowing this time. It was really cool.
I love you, man.
Likewise.
A lot of years between me and this guy. Guys, thanks a million for watching. And Zippers does do some great stuff, man. They got great camshafts. They do great head work. Their cylinder boring is wonderful and all that kind of stuff. And, if you're a kit guy, if you're a shop, you need some porting, you need some head work done, things like that, they do great work, man. They really do. If I didn't do all the stuff myself, too, or didn't have the capacity or whatever, he would be the guy that would be doing it for me. For sure.
That's absolutely good. And then anybody that's like watching this that is a follower of your channel and they're not near you geographically or something along that line, they need something. We have a small, very specific group of shops that are in the United States. It's a very unique group that are there, and we'll be happy to connect you if you need something. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, you guys know what my crazy backlog is right now on the custom engine side of things. Once I get cleared out of all of this craziness, if you guys wanted, one of Zipper's muscle kits or something like that, and you needed a good installer, I would put Danny's stuff in too. It's sometimes it can be quicker. Sometimes,
Well, the world's figured out that you're in high demand.
You think?
You got a lot of work here, brother.
Yeah.
Right. But that's part of that program of what you put together all those years, and it's impressive to see so many people from such a wide area would come and they're happy to get in line and do that, and that's a testament to all the hard work that you've done here.
Well, it carries a heavy burden. I'm not going to lie.
It does.
It carries a heavy burden because when a fella trusts you with his time and his money and he's willing to wait, there are no excuses. There are no excuses. It's this constant burden of as perfect as a person can try to be. I guess I say I strive for perfection so I can achieve excellence, right? And so it carries a heavy burden, but I say I have the best customers in the world. And what I owe them in return for their patience is, I think, the best that is humanly possible.
I agree. Yep.
So,
yep.
All right. Well, I appreciate you, Danny.
Thank
anyway,
you.
Guys, leave a comment and this and that. I just thought you guys might enjoy this. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. And if I don't make a video by then, we got Thanksgiving coming.
That's right.
And then we got Christmas or Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, whatever it is you celebrate. For me, it's Christmas. For you, it's Christmas. Guys, hope you have a good one. And we'll see you soon. Say bye, Danny.
Thanks.
See ya.